Welcome to the USS KIDD today. We are on board in Thoma-Sea shipyard. We're going to do a little bit of work in the reefer deck. We thought you might enjoy learning a little bit more about that rarely mentioned portion of the ship. But it's a shipyard environment and it's a little loud. So why don't you follow us and you're going to see the path that we have to take to get all of this old equipment out of the way of the shipyard workers so they can do work down in this space. You ready?
I'm ready.
Follow me, Molly. Ladder number 1. Ladder number 2. Three compartments away. We're in the enlisted mess. This is on the second platform from the main deck. You can see we've already started work. We got a bunch of stuff up here, and here is ladder number 3. We all made it down safely. All right, welcome to the reefer deck. Molly is standing and Elijah is standing out in the pump room on some of the later blueprints for KIDD and the Fletchers. This room would have been known as the ice making room. So apparently they had an ice maker in here at one point. But all of the pumps for the refrigerant for the reefer deck is right there under the fire tarp. And they're going to be doing work back there on the outer hull, which is behind Elijah, on the starboard hull.
Can I show them the hole?
You can show them the hole. After blasting, this hole popped up, and this was the last leak that occurred on our trip down. We were coming up the Houma navigation canal, and we popped a leak there. Of course, the ship was flexing, and once they got her in the dry dock and started blasting, then the hole widened significantly. The hull plate was very thin right in that area. And again, this is not lack of maintenance. This is an 82-year-old ship which started out with only 3/8 of an inch skin on the average. So stuff gets thin. So this room is called the vestibule on some of the blueprints. The names change a little bit as the eras go along, but we're going to show you the first freezer. And Molly, in order to do this, you're going to have to come over into this corner here. And this is where all the dairy, the butter and the eggs is kept. It's not a large space. And what they're going to, the reason we're having to clear everything out of these areas, we were using these areas as storage areas, is they're going to have to remove those coils. They're going to have to remove that outer insulated wall of the refrigerator, of the reefer, to get to the actual hull of the ship. So that's a false, not really a false wall, but it's the wall of the reefer, and behind it is the hull of the ship. So they're going to have to open this up in order to get to some of the areas where they're working.
And what are the coils for?
The coils are where the refrigerant would go, just like the coils in your old refrigerators that you would see. Like in Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull, you would actually see the frosted coils going back and forth. So these things would have frost all over them back in the day. So this is where the butter and the eggs and the dairy was kept, all the creamer. And for our Aussie and New Zealand friends in the Anzac, down in the southern hemisphere in World War II, the Australia, HMAS Australia and HMAS Shropshire came alongside us, and we're the Pirate of the Pacific. We've got the pirate up on the smokestack. They signaled us, what's those two things up on your smokestack? And our captain, Commander Roby, was pretty sharp on his wit, and he had the signalman respond, those are our starboard and port lookouts. And then they got into a nice conversation, and the Aussies said, you know, we'd like to trade. We've got some steaks that we can give you. And they brought it to Commander Roby, and he said, well, if we were good on supplies, go ahead and trade them. What do they want? Well, they'd like some fresh eggs. They'd like some dairy, some milk, creamer, that sort of stuff. You know, they're low on that, haven't had it. They're down into their powdered stores now. And Commander Obi's like, trade for something good for us. So they made the trade. Both cruisers slipped on off into the task force. The guys got the word spread through the crew fast, we're having steaks tonight. And they got the whole pallet of meat, they threw it in the galley and the steam kettle, started thawing it out. It wasn't steaks. They pirated the pirate. It was frozen, half-rotten mutton. So it boiled down to basically a meaty broth, very, very little like anything of physical substance to it. It was just kind of like a broth, and all the guys were expecting steaks. And so the cook had to strap on the boxing gloves and go back to the fantail and settle a few issues with some of the hardcore crew who just couldn't let it go that we got snookered. And as a result, on our social media the past few years, if you go back on Anzac Day in April and look, we've been tapping the Royal Australian Navy pretty hard about, hey, it's 80-something, 70-something years, and we want our steaks. But so far, no response. So any Aussies out there listening, let your Navy know we want our steaks. So they stole the dairy out of this space right here. Over on this side, you're going to have to step out, and I'm going to step where you were. It's a dance show, folks. Dancing with the reefer.
Very glad we have hard hats.
Hard hats are a must. This is where the vegetables would be stored. And Elijah, if you could hold this door so we don't crimp any lighting electrical. This is where all your vegetables would be stored. And as you can see, anytime we've gone out into the reserve fleet and pulled parts and everything, this is one of the places that we could store it because it's a dead end. It's not on the tour route. So we have a bunch of old mattresses, a bunch of bunk racks, and some old chairs. And other stuff has been stored in here at various points in time. But this is another area. Now these two bulkheads here, the forward bulkhead and the port bulkhead, will not have to be touched, but they will, again, have to cut into here and pull it out and then work on the outer hull from here. So we will be removing this today. You'll probably see this pop up on Facebook. And now you know how far we're having to go and what all we're having to lift and all the cramped quarters, the paths that we're having to get stuff out through. And then our last spot in the reefer, more dancing. I got the door, Elijah. Thank you, sir. Our last spot is, let me jam these doors together, friction science. Nope. Friction science. There we go. All right, our last door.
You can clip that on there.
Opens up into the meat locker. I'm going to take this down so we don't stab anybody. Stabbing is bad. The meat locker runs the whole length forward of these other two freezers. And you can see some of the support structure for the mess deck coming down. And all of this stuff is kids' old Cold War tables down there on the bottom, if you can make it out in the darkness, and the Cold War lighting. There you go. Cold War lighting, not the Cold War lighting, the Cold War seating. And they just brought it right down from the level above us, stuck it in here, and it's been here for the past 40-something years. And they went out in the reserve fleet and found the World War II type tables and benches and replaced this stuff with that. So this has all got to come out today as well. Anybody that sees this, if you ever want to help us move heavy stuff, we will take volunteers. You can see we've got some doors that we found in the reserve fleet that might be useful for us that we've stored down here. And that's the reefer deck. So when you hear about the reefers, that's our refrigerators, our freezers. And then we've got one more spot. We will slide back over here. You see this little oval hatch, and this is the Reefer Void, and this is where one of our leaks was. And Molly, if you want to get a shot looking down into it, this, when the ship was in service, it's just a void. You can see the longitudinals in the frames of the ship. This was basically a storage area. It's just a big void. It runs the whole length of the mess deck above us, forward to aft and side to side. And this was where dry stores and canned goods would be placed. And the guy that was in charge of this was what we would now call a culinary specialist. But back in the 1800s, the Royal Navy called him the Jack in the Dust. And by the time it came over to the American Navy, it became an official enlisted rating, the Jack of the Dust. And the reason that name comes about is all the dustiness of the bread lockers on the old ships and the flour that would be shoved around, sacks of flour, and so he would get dusty. And so that was an official rating, and even though they did away with the rating at the end of the 1800s, it was still an informal term that was still in use in World War II and a little bit beyond. And I think Elijah refreshed my memory in 2002. 2002, I think, is when they finally just completely did away with it. But there's still some older guys that still know the term that we run into on social media. And little known fact, Mr. Otto here, our curator, was at the Citadel, and also for how long in the Coast Guard Auxiliary?
I did about a year in the Coast Guard Auxiliary.
And
I did about a year in the Coast Guard Auxiliary.
And then you were what rating?
My rating was culinary specialist. That's what they put me as.
So you were a Jack of the Dust.
In a way, yeah.
Yeah. Did you get dusty?
No. I did one tour on about a 50-foot cutter, and then that was it.
Okay. Very good. So this is the reefer deck, and these are the reefers and the Reefer Void. In the comment section, let us know of other areas that you would like to see. We've gone down below the condensers in the engine room, and we'll be revisiting that shortly. If you saw the little video about Tough, we have a follow-up coming on that soon. Tuss, not Tough, Tuss. It was stylized the way it was painted, so yeah. So let us know about other areas that you would like to see. Go on Facebook. We did a hard hat tour, hashtag hard hat tour, for the past several years, because some of these spaces you just are not able to get into for the general public. And so we showed them in photograph format. And you can look those up, and if you want to see a video on them, I'm not Ryan Szymanski, even though we joke around. He's Ryan Szymanski. And we can crawl down in there with a camera and kind of show you what there is to see. So let us hear from you. Thanks for all your support. Remember, the USS KIDD Veterans Museum does not receive any regular state or federal funding. To support this dry docking effort, go to www.usskidd.com and click on the donate button. We need help to move stuff from our want list over to the do list. Not everything is covered. We want to make KIDD better than the bare minimum, and you can help us do that. Thanks a lot, and we'll see you next time. Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. I am the very model of a modern Major General. Reefer Reel.
You can